Have you ever heard of a landscaping dispute that needed B-52 bombers to solve it? I mean, a simple tree trimming job that brought the world right to the edge of a nuclear war? Okay, let's get into this, because back in 1976, that is pretty much exactly what happened. This is the absolutely wild story of a single poplar tree that almost kicked off World War III.
And, you know, as someone on the internet put it so perfectly, this whole story proves one very simple point. When the United States finally decided it was time to deal with this tree, the response was, well, let's just say it was a little over the top.
And by a little over the top, I mean a full-blown military operation. We're talking dozens of helicopters buzzing around, massive strategic bombers flying in from Guam, fighter jets screaming overhead. They even moved an entire aircraft carrier battle group into position. And on the ground, elite special forces. All of this for one single tree.
So that brings us to the big question, right? Why? Why on earth would you mobilize this incredible show of force for what sounds like a job for, I don't know, a couple of guys with a chainsaw? Well, to get the answer, we have to start with a tragedy.
See, this story isn't really about a tree at all. It's about what happened when a completely routine attempt to prune that tree went horribly, horribly wrong in one of the most dangerous places on the entire planet.
So picture this. It's 10:30 in the morning, August 18th. Everything seems normal. A small UN command team shows up to prune a tree that's blocking the view between two checkpoints. But about 20 minutes later, North Korean soldiers show up and tell them to stop. The American captain, Arthur Boniface, he just waves them off. Well, the North Korean officer calls for backup, and suddenly the UN team is seriously outnumbered. And then the unthinkable happens. The North Korean guards grab the axes that the work crew had dropped, and they attack. In just a shocking, brutal moment of violence, they kill Captain Boniface and Lieutenant Mark Barrett.
Now, to understand how things could explode like this, you really have to get what the JSA was like. I mean, sure, on paper, it's a neutral zone for talks, but in reality, it was a total pressure cooker. In the 23 years leading up to this, there had been dozens of fistfights, shoving matches, constant intimidation. This was not some peaceful garden. It was a tinderbox just waiting for a spark.
The reaction was, as you can imagine, immediate and absolutely furious. The president of South Korea, Park Chung-hee, he did not mince words. He compared the attack to a mad dog and said it needed a stick. So right away, the stage was set for some kind of massive retaliation.
And this is the exact moment that the story goes from a tragic, awful border incident to a full-blown international crisis that pushed the world right to the very edge of another major war.
Now, you've got to remember the timing here. It's 1976. The United States is still stinging from the pullout from Vietnam. Around the world, there's this perception that maybe American power isn't what it used to be. So President Ford's administration simply could not afford to look weak after an attack this blatant.
Of course, as you'd expect, the two sides had completely different stories about what went down. The US and South Korea called it what it was, a brutal, unprovoked murder. North Korea, though, in their official statements, they claimed it was a grave, provocative action by U.S. imperialists who were just trying to start another war. You had two completely separate realities with no middle ground.
And you can see this divide perfectly in the official documents from the time. On one side, you've got these declassified American reports, very clinical, just detailing the facts of what happened. And on the other, you have these fiery North Korean statements, just filled with accusations of imperialism and aggression. It's a really stark picture of two nations just talking right past each other as they're heading towards a major conflict.
So here's the crucial point, and this is where it gets really terrifying. This wasn't just about a potential conventional war. No. We know now from declassified documents that this incident is considered the last time the United States came dangerously close to actually using nuclear weapons on the Korean Peninsula. Let me just break down how close they really came. Tactical nukes, which were already in South Korea, were physically moved to forward positions. The American commander on the ground, General Stilwell, was given the authority, ahead of time, to launch a massive artillery strike on a North Korean barracks if they interfered. And get this is a wild piece of history. Stilwell basically cut off the White House from stopping him. He put styrofoam cups over the microphones of the only two secure phone lines, so he could hear them, but they couldn't give him a direct order to stand down. He was not going to be second-guessed in the middle of a crisis.
So all of this leads to the American response, and for a plan to cut down a single tree, they gave it a very fittingly oversized name, Operation Paul Bunyan.
But the planners were really smart about this. The goal wasn't just simple eye for an eye revenge. That could have just escalated out of control. Instead, the plan was to use an overwhelming, undeniable amount of force to achieve one very simple, very clear objective: cut down that tree. And in doing so, they had proved that the U.S. and its allies could not be intimidated.
So on the ground, they brought in 64 elite Special Forces soldiers from the Republic of Korea, all of them Taekwondo experts, and their job was to provide security.
In the air above them, a swarm of 27 helicopters, including some seriously armed Cobra attack gunships.
And then, just sitting off the coast, was the USS Midway aircraft carrier with its entire battle group. The message they were sending was absolutely unmistakable.
But if you want a detail that shows you just the raw, unbelievable intensity of that moment, listen to this. Eyewitnesses say that some of the South Korean Special Forces soldiers on the ground actually had claymore mines strapped to their chests, with the detonators in their hands, yelling at the North Korean troops, basically daring them to intervene. The tension must have been just off the charts.
And in the end, the operation went off without the North Koreans firing a single shot. They just watched, completely stunned, as that tree was cut down in 42 minutes. And the message sent afterwards, it's just so blunt, it's almost funny. No threats, no talk about the murders, just a cold, factual statement that, hey, we finished the job you tried to stop us from doing. The show of force had worked perfectly.
So what happened after all the sawdust settled? Well, the impact of Operation Paul Bunyan was immediate, and believe it or not, it's echoed through history in some pretty surprising ways.
What happened next was, well, it was something nobody expected. Just a few hours after the operation, North Korea's leader, Kim Il-sung, personally sent a message. Now, it wasn't a formal apology, but he actually expressed regret over the incident. For the incredibly prideful North Korean leadership, that was a huge concession. It was a clear sign that the American show of force had worked, and it de-escalated the crisis on their terms.
And check this out. Here is one last, just stunning connection between this Cold War event and our own time. One of the young South Korean Special Forces soldiers on the ground that day, part of that 64-man team, was a guy named Moon Jae-in. Decades later, that same soldier would be elected president of South Korea, tasked with navigating the very same tensions he witnessed up close as a young man.
And that kind of leaves us with one final big question. Back in 1976, this operation was done in almost complete secrecy. Today, every single troop movement would be on social media in real time. So could a modern crisis, sparked by something as seemingly small as a damn tree, be managed with that same delicate balance of force and restraint? Or would today's world of instant information just make a peaceful resolution impossible? It's definitely a sobering thought.